Welcome everybody to the Let's Talk HR show with myself, Jack Nolan, and my special guest today, Antony Platt. Antony Platt is a special HR professional in my eyes. So today we're going to chat about what does HR mean to you, Antony?
Thanks, Jack. Yeah, that's a good start. Yeah, hopefully I'll live up to expectations. But yeah, thanks. It's a pleasure to sort of come on and speak about HR, a real passion area of mine. Really happy to work in the industry. So yeah, anytime that I can talk about HR is a good time for me. So
that's brilliant. So what does HR mean to you, Antony?
Yeah, HR for me is just all about the people. Really focusing on that employee experience, making it so that sort of working experience is great for them. That everyone comes to work every day to enjoy themselves, really contribute, and so it's about making sure that they feel that they're sort of engaged and well motivated, and that they can just perform all the duties as expected of them. Making sure we have the right resources in the right areas, looking after our talent. I always view HR as like a balancing act, really, because you want the employees to think that you're working with them and you're on their side and you're one of the people and very approachable, very like-minded. With the managers, you always want the managers to think that they're well supported, well coached, that you always sort of support them through all the difficult challenges that they face. But ultimately, we're paid for by the business, so the business needs always comes first. So it's a balancing act sort of between those three sort of people and making sure that you're sort of putting yourself in a good position where every sort of one of your stakeholders sees you as being on their side and really supportive for what they're trying to achieve.
That's a really unique perspective. That, you know what, I don't think I've actually heard that perspective before. You know, that balancing act, that word balancing act between business and employee, getting everyone on the same page and
Yeah,
moving towards them goals that you all set yourselves, because obviously the business has got to succeed for everyone to get paid. You know what I mean? At the end of the day. So that's a really key point what you've made there. So I can't agree with you more, really. It's a balancing act, like, you know what I mean? So I'm really grateful he said that. So moving
yeah,
on.
it's
Oh,
I
sorry,
don't know if it's a
yeah.
unique perspective, but it's certainly something which I've sort of picked up on my time in HR. You know, I'm very mindful that I'm always lucky to sort of have a job and they sort of put the money in my bank to sort of continue working and stuff like that. So you always want to make sure that, you know, the business ultimately, I know the employees and the managers won't want to hear this, but the business needs do come first. The business has to be successful in order for us all to sort of be employed and remain in employment. But it doesn't stop me trying to, interact with our people, make them feel like I'm one of them. And I come to work just like anyone else to have fun, to enjoy myself. You spend a lot of time at work, and for me, that should always sort of come first. So all the interactions that I try and have, I like to remain positive, like to bring good energy to the room. And I just like to sort of have people that whenever they sort of deal with me, they always leave feeling, well, that was, nice to sort of speak to Antony, or, he's very approachable, very likable. So I always try and, keep up those high energy levels, which can be exhausting, but I do think it sort of helps me in the long term, build those sort of, strong, long lasting relationships with people that just make them want to come back to you and continue to work with you sort of going forwards.
Absolutely, Anthony. I couldn't agree with you more there, because it is that relationship building that makes the organisations that you're working within strong as a unit. You know, you're a family at the end of the day. It's like your second home, isn't it? Because you spend most of our lives in the working environment, so it's good to be able to make them bond stronger and make everyone progress in the direction that they want to be within fulfilling their career journeys. So
Yeah, definitely.
what inspired and influenced you to work within HR?
It's quite a tough one because I went to sort of school, college, sort of sixth form, university, and I'm very academic sort of growing up. It's sort of middle of the class type, and I always knew that I wanted to be part of business. And for me, I didn't really know where that would end up, whether it be finance, marketing, and ultimately, I think my sort of biggest driver was to try and touch as many of the areas of the business as possible, and sort of looking at that with that mindset, and sort of then trying to match like my strengths and sort of my strength areas to where that can sort of come into the business. And I thought, I'm a good communicator, good with people. I read people well in certain situations and things like that. And I just thought that sort of ticks multiple areas for the HR world. And you sort of go into something not really sort of expecting it to be a success. You sort of, there's some sort of challenging times, and it may not be the right path. But thankfully, coming out of university, I was sort of able to commit to HR, and I haven't looked back since, Jack. I've really enjoyed it. it's sort of done everything that I thought it would do, and that, you know, on a daily basis I get to sort of work across the whole business, whether it be working with sales, marketing, finance, operations, you know, front end, back end. You really do get to see a lot of business. You need, not many people know this, but you need quite a lot of business acumen to sort of work in HR. You need to understand how business works. So you need to be quite commercially minded and switched on. And I think that sort of, for me, is something that sort of keeps me going, sort of keeps me sort of coming back to work with a smile on my face every day, because I sort of get exposed to those elements of business which you sort of study from your textbooks, whether you're doing your university degree, your CIPD, things like that. That's the sort of learnings that stand you in good stead for when you get out actually into the working world. And yeah, from there, like I said, I haven't looked back. You know, I was lucky that I started off on that journey. It doesn't always work out for people. Sometimes you sort of get people go down a certain path and realize actually it's not quite for them, and they sort of have a rethink and try something else. But for me, I would always advise people to focus on their strengths and try and match that to something that they sort of enjoy doing. And also, I feel like I was well served by committing to my studies early on. I did my CIPD sort of straight from university, which was quite tough when you're young and people sort of try and encourage you to go out drinking and partying and do all that stuff, and you've got to commit to more university studyings and things like that. But having those sort of qualifications at an early age has enabled me to focus on, you know, my family life at a good important time for me. And I feel like I'm in a good position in my career at the moment where I've got significant work experience behind me. I've sort of been in HR for 14 years now, and I still feel quite young, and I can still bring energy to the role, which is quite a good sort of position to be in, because it can be quite exhausting sometimes being on that front end.
Absolutely, Anthony, and I love that journey you've been on, and that sacrifice that not a lot of people talk about. You know what I mean? Like, I can relate to that a lot. Like when I was writing my books from the age of 15 to 20 odd. You know what I mean? There's a lot of sacrifice that goes into pursuing something that you want. You know what I mean? And it's great. I'm really grateful to hear that from yourself, because, you know, everyone sees the success, but they don't see the grind, the hustle, the sacrifice, the commitment, the desire, everything that language of success that goes into being where you are today. And you paid that price early, and now you're reaping the benefits. Like you said, you're having more time with your family, more time to focus on all that energy that you want to bring to the job that you do, bringing value to people, and you're more advanced and more ahead of like the game than anybody else within that your profession, really. You know what I mean? If you was looking at it like an athlete and you was competing with other players in the arena, you know, you'd like the Michael Jordan level, wouldn't you? You know what I mean? So you'd be like, you're up there because of everything you've paid. But it's not come overnight, you know what I mean? It's took you like that sacrifice and that belief in yourself to get where you are today, playing to your strengths, you know what I mean? So massive.
Yeah, exactly. Just that commitment. Once you sort of decide on something, you fully commit to it, and if you spend the time sort of learning it and, you know, being the best self of you as possible, then, you know, hopefully that does reap positive results. And you're right. Sport acronyms, people like Jadon Sancho and things like that, people don't realize that he's never had an alcoholic drink in his life, because he's always committed himself to the sport. You know, he's thought if he eats well, if he, you know, trains well, and, you know, he's a multi-millionaire now because, you know, yes, he had some skill initially, but he's really committed himself to learning that particular trait and those skills, and, you know, taking himself out of his comfort zone to go abroad to a different team to actually get exposure and things like that. He's made those hard choices, those sacrifices, and he's now in a position where he's, you know, reaping the rewards. And yeah, it doesn't happen to everyone, but, you know, there are successes there. So I think that's the best way to go about it.
Absolutely. It's all them little 1% that add up. You know what I mean? Like you said, not drinking, eating healthy, going to the gym, having the right mindset, showing up, commitment, the time you put in, the connections you make, the relationships you build, everything. It's universally like approachable in all areas of life. You know what I mean? From HR to sales to marketing to anything industry. You know what I mean? Having that winning mindset gives you the edge. You know what I mean? And the commitment that you back up with, because obviously you understand that, you know, you can't just hold your fingers like that and say, right, something great's going to happen to me today, but I'm not going to put any action. I'm going to watch Netflix or whatever it may be. You've got to show up. You've got to be committed. You've got to put in the movements to make yourself move forward. So, Anthony, I know we went on a bit of a ramble there, but we was all passionate and into it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no. I'm
Sorry,
good at that. I'm good at starting off on a particular question and just sort of going off on a ramble. And But again, I'm passionate about HR. Like, I really am, and you know, it's when you sort of approach me to sort of do the podcast, it's one of these which it's, you know, people may just be like, well, you know, I don't particularly want to do that, but actually, you know, if people listen to this and they just think, actually, like, I am inspired, I do want to do it. Like, it's a really good profession to get into. If you care a lot about people, I think you do well in HR, because we're touched on, you know, well-being and the mental side and the physical side of it. And for me, that's one of the biggest plus areas about HR, is you can actually have a positive impact on other people's lives. So yeah, that's what's inspired me. I got into HR to really make a difference to people and to care for people and to look after people. And for me, HR is really well suited to that sort of you know, mindset about helping others.
Absolutely, mate. That's bang on. Like, honestly, like, couldn't have said it better myself, mate. You know what I mean? From the background that I've got in terms of, you know, mental health and speaking and sharing my vulnerabilities to help people and be passionate about what I do. You know what I mean? Like, it's so relatable to the areas that I'm involved in as well. So, like, again, you're a credit, mate. So, again, how important is we talked about mental health then, but I was just going to go straight into this question on how important is the mental and emotional well-being of your workforce?
I mean, for me at the moment, it's everything. It's such a big sort of topic. It's probably the most sort of pressing concern at the moment, and that's purely because the demands that have been put on people at this moment in time. You know, yes, sort of COVID's there, and COVID's really sort of heightened everything. You know, we've never sort of been through this. It's unprecedented in terms of what we've had to go through. The lines between work and personal life have been so blurred. You know, everyone's expected to sort of stay connected on through, and really for me, it's simple. Like, you want your best employees to turn up in the best possible condition in order to generate the best possible results for the business. So really, that it makes, you know, common sense that you really want to be there for your employees. You want to make sure that they're well sort of supported. And that's just not necessarily emotional. There are physical things there as well, and mental things which really do matter. For me, I think the biggest thing is that you've got to keep your finger on the pulse. You've got to make sure that employees who don't necessarily feel comfortable speaking up feel like they can speak up. You feel like you are approachable, that they can confide in you, that they can seek for help for you. And there are so many different areas in which you can possibly help.
You try again.
Sorry, Siri's getting involved now. I think Siri's got an opinion as well. And for me, yeah, mental and emotional well-being, that's very difficult and very challenging to get right. You know, there are no always easy sort of solutions for people. But the biggest things that I sort of feel is that you've got to make employees feel comfortable that they can speak up. And when they do speak up, you want to provide an environment for them where they, you know, are well supported and comforted, and they then signpost the right directions. I think one of the biggest sort of learnings that I sort of took on is, you know, I want to care and I want to help, but I'm not always the best person to help. But what I am is I'm the best person to then forward them on to that sort of professional, that sort of expertise where they can get the best possible help from them. And whether that's EAP, whether it's, you know, counselling, whether it's just, you know, a mental health first aider, etc. There are so many different routes that they can go down and support. The main one is that you've just got to keep your finger on the pulse, just to make sure that you get a good understanding of what's happening in your business or your business area that you're looking after. It's really tough, Jack. I'm sure you're probably really sort of, this is your area of expertise here, but this is probably the busiest that you've ever been in terms of everything that you're having to cover, the amount of literature that's coming out all the time because of new studies that have been done, trying to keep up to date with best practice. It's you know, a full-time job in itself sometimes, trying to keep up to date with those sort of well-being initiatives that have been put out there.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I suppose you've just got to go down to, like you said, trusting yourself and knowing that you're going to point people in the right direction. You're like the go-to. It's like being the coach in the team, and you're playing all these, wearing all these different hats. You're the dad to some, you know, the father figure to some of the younger ones in your organisation. You're the big brother to some of in your organisation. You're the uncle. You're this. You got that. You got to have that sort of responsibility of like the head of the family. You know what I mean, within your organisation, to make sure that these employees and your staff members and your colleagues that you come close with, that there's no favoritism going on. You're just there to help and support everybody. You know what I mean? It's like there's no golden boy in the family, is there? You know what I mean? It's like that. You've got to be able to have that same love and respect to all your employees and colleagues and friends, essentially, because you become friends with people in the workforce and you become a unit. And you've got to coach them and move them and mentor them into the best possible way to make sure you get the best result out of them, as well as they feel fulfilled and developed within their career. Because at the end of the day, I feel we show up not just to work and earn money, but to become our best selves. Like in the sales profession, for example, everyone wants to be number one. You know what I mean? And that's what motivates some sales professionals. And within sport, like yourself, you're working with like I know I looked a little bit into that. You're involved with like a basketball sort of company. You support kids and stuff like that, and I think that's really great what you do. And you got to have the right language when you're speaking to each person to know how to, again, like a sport, how to pass the ball to each other. If that's a metaphor for life, really, how to keep that ball bouncing from side to side, and how you can win at that game. In business, because business is a bit like a sport, I suppose you could say. So everyone's got to have their own unique place in that team, whether the number one player, number two player, number three player, etc. Each person's role, no matter what number they are on the team, is really important to the development of the company. That's my personal opinion. I could be wrong, Anthony, but that's
and I always find that the most challenging thing is, none of us are the same. Like, we're all individual, all different, and having the conversation with non-like-minded people who just don't get the importance of employee well-being or mental is probably one of the hardest aspects of my job, because I just end up pulling my hair out. You get the people who don't necessarily appreciate like those, the importance of actually caring for your employees and taking the time to listen to them. And that is probably the hardest part of my job, because you feel like you're teaching people to just be a basic human and really show caring, compassion to other people, and some empathy where needed. And so not all people get it. People still need coaching about it. People still need developing. But I'd like to think, in terms of where we are, in terms of my HR career, like, I've been in HR for 14 years now, which for some is a long time, for some other isn't. But in the 14 years that I've been in it, this is probably the most that we've ever talking about employee well-being, whether it be mental, physical, which is a good sign, because it shows that actually we're starting to do the right things, care about people, and we're starting to see the benefit of, once you do care for them, actually they then in turn help your business out twofold. And some people, you sort of try and motivate people and things like that, and you have all these great methodologies on how to keep people motivated and how you can really get the best of people in the role and things like that. But the one thing which people just want is, they just want to be looked after, and they just want to be supportive. And as soon as you can give them that, then they'll give you so much loyalty back in return. It's unbelievable.
Absolutely, mate. Honestly, like, I couldn't agree. I know I keep saying this, I couldn't agree more, but you're saying everything that's just bang on. You know what I mean? That we're not just cogs in the machine. And I think that mindset of changing that perception of employees as being more than just a cog in the machine playing their role is so much more important. You know what I mean? Because if you're nurturing people and you're pulling out their strengths and their, superpowers, you could say, that's only going to increase the value of a company. You know what I mean? Because once someone learns that actually I can stand on the stage and speak to hundreds of people and represent the company that I'm working for, doing X, Y, and Z, or doing whatever, that constant, employee personal development is massive. You know what I mean? It can boost so much value within that ecosystem, within the workforce, which is, I believe, is massive. Again, moving on to one of the last questions, and I'm conscious of your time as well. In your experience, what have you found creates great leadership within your teams?
Yeah, for me, again, just sort of trying to keep it simple. There's sort of maybe 4 or 5 things which everyone could possibly do. I think first and foremost, I think you need a bit of self-awareness. So how you can portray yourself in front of other people, I think that really is important. Once you sort of have that sort of self-awareness, I think you'll then understand how people start seeing you. If you don't have that self-awareness, maybe you don't understand that actually you're not coming across in the right way, or you're losing trust, you're losing confidence in the people. And that's about showing a little bit of empathy. I think the best leaders out there sort of are people who people can relate to and feel like actually they understand what I'm going through, and they're on this journey with me. I think one of the most common mistakes is that you don't have that empathy, and it's a them and us. And I think that's where you don't have like the that that your employees behind you. And the other thing, simply like communication. I think communication is key. There's so much stuff that's written about communication and just the way in which you speak to people, how often you speak to people. I think that's important. Showing a bit of gratitude, a bit of recognition. I think that's one of the things which turns people off mostly, is that you put in all this hard work and all this effort, and at the end of it, if you get nothing back, then straight away you're just like, why do I bother? Why do they don't even care? So I just think great leaders are really good at that gratitude. It just has to be like that pat on the back, or it just has to be that thank you, and it has to be like just simple things about the right time to say it, how to say it. I think that really keeps people sort of engaged and keep wanting to deliver. I think because they show that they're appreciated, shows are respected as well. And finally, I'm really sort of a big fan of open and like honesty, and really being quite transparent. Sometimes I can be a little bit too transparent, but it's just the way I'd sort of feel that if I was an employee, like I would want someone to just be so open with me and so honest with me, and that sort of starts building trust. So it's like having that courage to have those conversations with people, not afraid to sort of back away from confrontation, or not afraid to back away from difficult conversations. Just have faith and trust in yourself that you can do it. And generally, like, you're in that role for a reason. You're a leader because you've got the experience behind you, or you've got the skill set behind you. So just having a bit of confidence in yourself that you can do it. But yeah, great leaders. It's a tricky one, really, Jack, because I've seen some really bad leaders, and it's so like obvious straight away like why they're a bad leader. And in terms of great leadership, it's just they seem to do the basics really well, and they don't really have many weaknesses to them. It's not because they've got one thing that stands out more than anything else. It's just generally they tend to do things right all the time. I think that's the thing that makes a great leader.
You bang on there, Anthony. Honestly, like, communication is king. It's so underlooked. You know what I mean? I think without that communication and that moral authority as well, to be able to say, I've been through what you're going through. I know your pain, but this is what I'm doing, and I'm, leading by example. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Showing that there is a way. You know what I mean? Like, understanding that some employees are going through a lot of stressful situations, but having that vulnerability as a leader to say, for example, I'm bipolar, I'm dyslexic, I struggle with this, I struggle with that, and I'm constantly only as good as the people around me. If that is shown through a leader, that makes them people and employees go, actually, you know what? He's honest. He's told us his weaknesses. I understand why he does this particular thing now, because he's struggling in this area, and that's why he needs me to be a superhero on that day. He needs me so that we can all be moved forward and be just as great as a team together and win, because that's important. You know what I mean? Like, everyone sort of might see that winning is a bit of a negative thing, like, oh well, it's egotistical, it's that and the other. But essentially, when you watch football, you want your favourite team to win. So why not want to win in business and your career and your profession and where you want to be in life? So, why not have that mentality of being the best you can be through communication, through moral authority, through that bonding as a unit, and all the great things that come with working within a great company, such as yourself, the one that you work for. But again, conscious of your time, I know there's a few minutes on the clock before.
No, it's right. I think just to end, you make some good points. I think we all remember the times when we won, but in some cases, even when we lost, like, I've probably learned more in my losses than I have in my wins. So don't be afraid of a loss. Like, losses happen. The biggest thing that you could do out of a loss is just sort of recap, sort of understand why it is that we lost, try and understand, and just make sure that it doesn't happen again, and that we can improve as a result of that. And you'll end up winning far more than you lose if you sort of take that mentality.
Absolutely. And on that note, I want to say thank you, Anthony, for your time today. Thank you for all the listeners who've been listening. I hope you take something away from Anthony's words of wisdom there.
Yeah, cheers, Jack. Thank you.
Motivational session, and very empowering. So thank you for everyone who's listening in, and I'll see you next time in Let's Talk HR with myself, Jack Nolan, and my next special guest,